Hello, we are here in Fatima, Portugal, in the cold of winter, almost near 0 degrees Celsius a day. For me, at least, very pleasant. It's an invitation to retreat and withdrawal. This is the public sharing of the December 27th, 2025. And here we have some questions, and the title of the sharing is Portals for Inner Maturity. So we can verify within us and in the world as a whole how humanity is going through a very specific and special time, so determining time. This for various reasons that have been studied. The moment of the planet, it's the moment of humanity itself, it's the moment of the spiritual hierarchy, and all of this gradually gathers elements that in the inner planes press for a synthesis, and our material vehicles resent that somehow a lot. Well, today we'll have a work that combines questions, then we will deepen the topic of today with the questions, and in the end, we'll close with a work, as we mentioned in the last public sharing, a kind of attunement and alignment, as each one can understand. We have studied the topic of the right conscious. We will remember this, and we'll do a work today with the five geometric figures, the symbols that help our consciousness to migrate from the synthesis of the work with chakras into what we call the right conscious. Let's build this content together. Someone asks, after all, what should be done for humanity to come out of this crisis in which it finds itself and so that it can take a step towards a higher plane, a higher pattern? What is the impulse that moves our behavior? This is an important reflection. And someone else asks, where is the solution to this world crisis, to the human crisis? Where can we find it? How not to be satisfied with just crunches. Those crunches would be transitory solutions that do not bring solutions, but just let us accommodate and alleviate our relationship with this pressure. And lastly, but not least important, the person asks, after all, is the planetary destination depending on human decisions, or is there something guiding this process? This is an important question. Let's go in different stages. First, we have to remember and understand that the planet really and humanity are going through a very specific moment, a very determining moment, which is the end of a cycle. Humanity has gone through other cycles in Lemuria, Atlantis, the kingdom of Mut, the lands of Elan, other cycles that were characterized by the climax of the focusing of the human consciousness on the physical plane, then on the etheric plane, the astral plane, and now on the mental plane. We are a mental race, and this is also why the clash is so intense, because with technology, the internet, this stimulus of intuition, the work with inner telepathy, all this makes the mental plane be overburdened. And this is why the work we'll do today with the forms will be important so that we can discern not only what is good and from what is not good, but to discern what is true for us. This is very important because oftentimes something is good, but it's not the moment for us to address that. So we make contact with what is good for others, but it's no longer good for us. And let's see why. In 1988, we have studied in previous sharings. So this is a comment, a side comment. The sharings are recorded on the website of Irdin. So all those who are attracted to these contents, they should restudy these sharings because there is a foundation that gradually consolidates the deepening of all this. We have other sharings. We have all the list of the sharings of Trigueirinho, and this is why at each video, eventually, if we like the content, we click on this button that says this or that. We are free and we should be aware of that. So, and when we say we like it, this is interpreted by the platform as something positive that could reach other souls. So we leave this comment with the sole motive of attracting other consciousness that might have this help. So we have studied in 1988, and that was a moment in which the spiritual hierarchy of the planet, specifically Astaras Gran, activated within an evolutionary plane the field of monads. So we have the human consciousness, the bodies, the personality, the soul, and the monads, which is our spiritual world. And as the field of monads is activated, everything that permeates this situation, in other words, the rays that comprise our nature and the nature of our bodies, what we call lineages, our bonds with the points of light on the planet. Remember that we studied that sharing spiritual realities of the planet. So there are many inner movements that have been activated at once. So the planet began being attracted to immaterial life, and this generates a great movement within us and in our bodies. Well, within this movement as a whole, we start becoming aware of the existence of an evolutionary plan for us, an evolutionary plan for the planet, and this completely changed or should have changed completely the focus of our interests, migrating from personal interest into an interest to serve the evolutionary plan. So this demobilizes or displaces the gravitational focus of our intention for the human ego, for our own evolution, into something broader, which deep down we do not know what it is. We are discovering, we are starting a new cycle of collaboration with what is called the spiritual hierarchy. So, in this context, my last question, if the planet is drifting, no, it's not drifting. What happens is that in this end times, everything relatively is allowed. So previous bonds, even ours with a hierarchy that is not of the light, they are also making their synthesis within us. This is why at some moments we oscillate for the interest for spiritual things, and at some moments we see ourselves in slippery grounds with human things, but this is a part of the process. Just one side comment I would announce later on, but I'll announce now. We will start a cycle of short videos of 5 to 7 minutes that will also focus on these questions. These videos will be posted throughout the week and will be available for all, and they will touch the topics or expressions or subjects that will create in our consciousness a foundation so that when the moment of the sharing comes, we have already built and accumulated some elements. So, so, so the first video is do not try to bury your own shadow. So this concerns our relationship with the human condition and this effort that the immature personality has, that of sweeping onto under the carpet of what we have in our personality in our bodies. This is inevitable. It's not a punishment. It's a part of the process. We'll see a part of this in a subsequent question. Another topic is the service and the grace of state. In other words, how we count on grace of state, what we call grace of state, which is an energy that comes from the material universe to cover the precariousness and imperfection of human nature, allowing us to minimally enter a stream of service to the hierarchy of the evolutionary plan. We'll also touch a very broad topic of the hierarchy. What is hierarchy precisely? How we relate to the hierarchies. That which has guided you up to now may guide you in on the next steps. Other topics that come with the questions, so they will be short videos. We'll start with this in the coming week. We have some other questions and we'll work on them today. How can we be less affected by thoughts from others, including thoughts of family members? Very good. I have used a work called Imitation of Christ, and it says, do not be afflicted if anyone has a bad concept about you or tell you things that the other does not want to hear and has generated a reaction. You should often study yourself and evaluate yourself as rigorously as possible. If you practice inner life, you will not pay attention to words that fly towards you. It's not about being indifferent, but about using this impulse for self improvement. It's great prudence to go silent in hours of tribulation, to turn to to me. The me means Christ, and not be disturbed with human judgments. So here, according to the imitation of Christ, it's one of the ways that we do not get involved, not be affected by these thoughts. Naturally, many things are at play here, including others that help us. This is what he says, use everything in the quest for this revision and self-reflecting. Saint John of the Cross, who today is a spiritual hierarchy, when you enter the path, you should learn to be like a statue or a raw pebble. There'll always be someone who will polish this statue. So you need a lot of humility, a lot of neutrality, a lot of lack of competitiveness, and we should remain at the highest point we can get. The judgment of others will lay with them, will lie with them. Here's something quite recurrent that happens to all of us. As much as obsession is a strong word, this happens to all of us. We experience obsession, for example, when we relate to many content, especially in social networks, especially of those kinds that have nothing to do with our moment. So sometimes this does not relate to our spiritual path. The person asks, I experience a lot of disturbance and a very strong harassment. Would you know what to do so that I can become free from these obsessions? Again, it's a very broad topic. All of us, as we are beings in evolution, we in other lives have had inevitable contact with currents of expression, and many of them not connected to the good. This has created a karmic bond, and at this final moment of humanity and the planet, this is a transition into a state of a broader consciousness. These bonds come after us, demanding that movement that we, up to then, we were used to nourish. So they cannot accept that our freedom from those currents. So there are many processes and mechanisms that can collaborate in this situation. But as you live abroad, you live in Canada, if I understood your question well, as you mentioned, a very close help to us that we usually despise is being with nature. In our composition, our, our inner life, the inner bodies, and we have the subtle bodies, the mental body, the astral body, and the etheric physical body. And these interferences use a lot of our astral plane, which is a plane that is very close to the etheric plane. So this chaos, this confusion, this density, these threats that the negative systems, they make use of a lot of threats that try to cause fear, which is a movement of making our consciousness step back and cause insecurity. But when we are in nature, our etheric body expands in contact with the ethers, the elements. This promotes a circulation of these energies that are less edifying, and then we feel relief. So perhaps experience, if possible, to place your feet on the grass, on the lawn, on sand, on the river, in the river, come out of this density of concrete life and external life. This can also help you. And in your own nature, seek some inner content, such as a mental content, such as reading mantras. See if this helps you. To propose exorcism, it would have to be a place that works with the evolutionary plan. It is very rare nowadays generating exorcism without disturbing the intermediate planes. So be prudent with this so as not to worsen the situation, because those who will sustain that liberation afterwards, what will occupy the blank generated by the liberation? We have to be very responsible with this. What is convenient when we disembody? What is best for the soul so that it may ascend? What is best? to bury the body or to cremate. This process is sensitive because it involves the point of evolution of the soul and the degree of involvement of the consciousness in the present incarnation. So even if it is an advanced soul, an evolved soul, and in general we do not know, we cannot tell this externally. If the soul had a connection with the material plane of a lot of attachments with physical life, cremation could mean to the soul that it's being expelled from these bonds and not transit, not have a time of transit in which it would be helped to come out of this attachment before being cremated. This is why 48 at least hours before cremation is recommended so that those beings that heal the process of the soul may have a chronological time to deactivate these bonds and prepare the consciousness of the soul to live the experience of cremation without feeling expelled from the bodies. But we might ask, what is the importance of this if they have already died? It's not like that. When we disembody, our consciousness is experiencing a transition. A lot of care is necessary so that soul does not bring to the inner planes a trauma like this, that of feeling expelled from an experience that it used to live before, regardless of that experience being or not an experience of attachment. So it's recommendable that we wait for 24 to 48 especially hours so that the soul may be helped and not feel expelled. And other lines of approach before this understand that matter of the bodies need to be returned to what is known as the general reservoir gradually, because that's also a process of service that all the light and learning experience that was impregnated into the physical matter as it is buried and returns to the general reservoir to live a gradual radiation to this general reservoir may also promote a healing. So it depends on the situation. It's a very intimate decision of each one that we have to respect. Here the person asks, how to establish an attunement with those who have the power to realign the worlds with the evolutionary goal of the cosmos. Is a contact with these spiritual beings possible? How to establish this contact and what are the risks of deception in this kind of experience? See how people are awakening. These are not questions oriented to material topics and the ego. These are really important doubts. Yes, there is what we know in the evolutionary plan as the central heavenly government. So within these short topics of the hierarchy, we will work with the central heavenly government. And why short videos? Because they are very short impulses that we can watch in brief moments that can mobilize our consciousness to a specific topic, generating an interest in the evolutionary plane for this contact. So returning to the question, these beings that lead evolution, yes, they exist. The point is that after 1988, this magnanimous consciousness that we call samana, which is not only the Christ, but an expression of Christic energy through many levels, including the one we know as Buddha. So samana organized, so to say, this final moment with what we know as the plan of rescue. And the plan, and in the end times, as we say, it is as if there were permission for many situations that beforehand they were not permitted. So almost everything is allowed in this end times because many ask, but does God or the universe can't God or the universe see what's happening? Why isn't so? We need to include in this question, in this reflection, in this doubt, the knowledge that in this end time, almost everything is allowed from the mental plane downwards. These hierarchies have determined what would be the field of expression of chaotic forces, and from the soul up with inwards and upwards, it would be the work of the spiritual hierarchy. So are we adrift with these forces of chaos? No. But what determines how much, to what extent will be helped is where we put our interest, where our free will goes. This is the key to this sharing. So when we say portals to inner maturity, we are dealing with this movement that we call the initiatic plan, which is something that is very occult to humanity. In these short videos, we will work on the topics of initiations so that we may gather all these elements and deciding and discerning if we want to become connected our consciousness with this, or if we'll nourish our own shadow, which is practically the last incarnation before this cycle of transition that will completely change the planet. And we do not know when this will be. We do not know. This involves many details. Well, so in this conjunct and of the end of times, if we are adrift as humanity, no, we are not. The point is, help is from the inner planes communicating with us, especially internally, on a soul level and an impersonal level. So the pressure that we experience, it is as if there were an intense pressure through the personality and a disconnection from the human interest onto the evolutionary plan. And in this massage, so to say, of the end times, this generates a considerable pressure. In this movement of being accompanied by these beings, and if it's possible, we need to understand what purification is. So let me find where I left some appointments about this. So purification only really happens aligned with the rescue operation and the higher hierarchies when we decide to be faithful to what we know is true. Only then is there the beginning of what we call global purification in us. Otherwise, it'll be a fleeting purification connected to human processes or processes of the body, which is not precisely the purification that is preparing the expansion of consciousness. It's different. So we can only enter the process of purification when we gradually confirm at each day our faithfulness to the laws that we already know. See how difficult it is, because in general, life is corrupt. Do not listen, do not hear this as an offense. That is a corruption regarding the higher laws, how we when we deal with the fruits, when we dealt with the fruits of Figueira, we talked about the points of light, and one of them is a center that safeguards the incorruptiveness of humanity, and is located in Finland. We'll return gradually to this in the short videos also. The need to be healed from this tendency to corruption, to come up with a way to become disconnected from what is not correct. And this deeper purification only starts within us and only deepens in us, and therefore will only allow our connection with those who guide us when we are at a certain point of purification. Why? Because if we consciously contact the hierarchy, that's not only a being, as we'll see in the short videos, it's we also who are being prepared to represent the hierarchy with values, lineages, energies of race, expressions. All this is our inner world. It's not our ego. So if we are not purified, everything becomes mixed. And this impulse of consciousness becomes imprisoned by the human ego, which is inevitable to a certain extent. And if we are purified, if we're not purified, we put at risk the reason and the meaning of having a contact with the hierarchy, which comes to liberate us and not to, so that we do not no longer follow the human evolution. With this is a very sensitive topic. So this moment we are going through as humanity that places us before the portal, which is a portal that was opened in 1988, the portal of initiation. We'll see in these videos what it is about, the tests of the soul, because the soul, when it sees itself before a clear horizon, an extremely creative environment, it's completely uncomparable to be before me as a soul, an evolutionary process that I need not only to awaken, but also pay attention to. And then the test of the soul will see at a certain moment what it is about. And then we think it's very simple. We have the help from the hierarchies, we have the vessels, the bodies of light, we have the points of light, we have our inner awakening, and our friends, what we call the guardians of the threshold. They say, "Hi, do you remember me in your previous incarnations? What will you do with me? Will you free my hand?" So the guardian of the threshold are aspects that were necessary. So be attentive. This is why we should not bury our own shadow. These are aspects that were part of our evolution at their moment, and they return now to ask and understand what's happening, so because they are here polarized in behaviors, acts, our way of thinking, of reacting. They have many guardians of threshold. So this emerges together with the test of the soul to see to what extent we are decided to to become liberated from this and to recover what can be recovered from the guardians of the threshold. This is a very broad topic that we'll not study today. And lastly, to what extent the soul gradually awakens to these more inner aspects and gradually gains an inner strength that is beyond the influence of these energies that are not rescuable. So the topic of the rescue operation is very important. There is an aura of rescue. We'll see in the study of these short videos how the topic of our blood, when we crystallize our blood we consolidate our blood, when we confirm ourselves before the path with our own, how our own blood changes, the crystals, the minerals in our blood gradually accumulate this light and change our physical vibration and also subtle vibration. But this is a very occult process that we'll have to study along many studies in this year that will begin. So let's make an introduction to the work that we'll do right away with the symbolic life also brought by the geometric forms, which is also called sacred geometry, so that we can study from the conceptual point of view and not from a conceptual point of view or what is known, but so that it may be a bridge to what we call right conscious. So we have many elements in the esoteric glossary, which is a work of Trigueirinho, published by Irdin Editor Irdin. We can go to the website of Irdin website to reach this content. In the chat, I ask you to put the link to the esoteric glossary and also the link to Bases do Mundo Ardente, basis of the fiery world, which also reports the experience of Trigueirinho before geometric forms. This is also accompanied by a deep inner discipline and a relationship with inner life. And there we have uh, an experience that can help us come out of this region of chaos that we experience today in material life so that we can gradually find again love for inner life. Because without love, we will not be able to persist. Love creates a bond. Love creates this need to renounce and choose, discern. Without love for evolution, discipline is empty. And 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 without and be careful because discipline can become a tool of chaos because it might become a discipline for soul affirmation, for the personality affirmation. See how sensitive it is. We'll do have a contact today with the star of fire, with the point, with the circle and the point, with the dot, the triangle and the circle. And we'll see how this gradually creates in us, and also with the six pointed stars, two triangles. It's very important that we may remain free from associations that all these symbols may have with religions, peoples, mystical or occultist tendencies. As we are here, let's open our openness. Let's exercise our openness to the unknown, because the mind that's very proud says, I already know it, and it will polarize into something else, and we miss the opportunity of, in the present moment, of receiving the impulse that we need, the impulse that can generate a movement that will then consolidate a bond that can remain open so that we may relate with these consciousness that are not in material plane. This should be permeated by an ethics, which is humility, inner emptying, and openness to the unknown. Well, and here, to conclude this introduction, someone asks, how can we tell if the inner visions and these impressions are really coming from inner planes and if they are true? See, Everything that comes from above generates in us transformation. A seed of transformation or a beginning reflection or a first signal that there is something beyond what we have already understood today. Nothing that is true that comes from the inner world comes to confirm our current moment. Even if it comes to strengthen our values and our aspiration, it comes to expand our aspiration. It will never make us stay in the same place we are now. This is a very important aspect. Whether it's a visual impression or a dream or a prayer or a sentence, whatever, what is important is to value. So we write down, we place the date, we read that time and again, and we relate with that because if an anxiety to show that emerges in us, and here I'm not addressing anyone because people send many dreams. I'm not talking to any of you. I'm talking in general. So, as the human ego, one of the situations that gravitate around the human ego is to try to stand out and the ego at the center. We have to disconnect from the beginning, from this automatism of the ego, and when we receive something, we place that within us, and we write down, we place a date, and we write down our experience with that, and a universe of possibilities comes. A universe of possibility comes. Okay, so very well. So now let's do this work. It's about 18 minutes approximately. We will observe. It's a contemplative work. I will conduct. The work has been recorded. We will watch this video already. You can watch it again. It'll be available on YouTube, the video, and each one will have their experience and questions that you have about this topic or other topics or suggestions of topics, place in the chat. So we'll organize ourselves to respond in these short videos because there are many accumulated dreams, and in one sharing, we cannot compile all of them with the necessary depth. Okay, so let's start the work with the images and geometric forms, and then we return to close the sharing. At the beginning of this work with the symbols, let's contemplate this image, the symbol, the proportion of forms, the vibration of colors. Let's remain before this, seeking inner emptying, seeking to avoid mental comments. Let's allow our minds to enter a state of inner stability beyond opinions, viewpoints, criticism. Let's allow gratitude, self-emptying, emerge from within us. Let's allow ourselves to have a moment of contact with symbolic life, with the vibration of supermental planes. And in this relationship with the symbols, let's seek an inner space that is less conditioned by thoughts, automatic thoughts, opinions, points of view. Let's see how the orange vibration gradually brings inner stability in our values, principles, so that this may help in the maturity of our discernment. Let's allow this symbol to work in our right conscious, on our direct knowledge, everything that is foreseen in the expansion of human consciousness. Our visual relationship with the symbol and with inner silence, we can perceive the rhythm of the symbol, that it pulsates in this beat pulsation. It can bring us life, impulses, ideas, always towards inner life and what is evolutionary, what is edifying for us. We allow this gratitude to expand. We silence a little so that the symbol may be engraved in our consciousness. And let's move on to the next symbol. And in this contact with the dot, is that emerges as the quest for what is essential, the quest for the only necessary thing. We quieten our emotional body, our mental body. We allow the only necessary thing to remind us where it is, within us. We submerge in this dot without seeking to project upon it anything that is not essential. This is the central nucleus within us. And in this concentration, we see how many things in us simply vanish. What is not essential dissolves, does not fixate our consciousness, which remains concentrated on this dot. We allow the emergence of this love for what is really necessary in this quest for expansion of consciousness. We simply observe. If anything that's superfluous comes, we let it go. We maintain our concentration on this dot, on what is really essential. We also feel the vibration, the rhythm, the mobilization of our energy to sustain this concentration. And we allow ourselves to become permeated by this concentration on what is essential. Now we include a circle around the dot, and we see how we can perceive the essential within a context, the essential within a harmony, within a whole, how something in us gains proportion, resizes, establishes itself within this context. How this essential dot in us includes the circle. Do you notice that between the circle and the dot, there is a space, there is a rhythm? Why not say a distance? Let's gradually discern what is in this empty space, in this virgin space. what emerges as initiative, as a creative space? What is my relationship? What is the relationship between this center, this essential dot with the circle? What involves this dot? What is between this dot and the circle? What emerges? What is our position of neutrality before the circle in which we participate? We allow this impression of being included to calm us, to maintain us in this circle, in this place, which we see in perspective. We allow the circle to calm us. We allow the symbol to align us and prepare ourselves for the next impulse. Once again, we feel the rhythm, the pulsation, and inner stability, and we give thanks. And from this relationship of the essential with inner spaces, with the circle, with the all, a triangle emerges. The triangle that can be a symbol of many expressions of universal life. We perceive in our inner plane, in our spiritual plane, and immaterial plane, we perceive our soul point, the inner life that is near us. And the third point, the aspiration of being an integrated personality. We see the essential dot, we see the personality, the soul, the spirit, seeking to evolve, to create, contained within a whole in which our consciousness participates. We feel as a dot, and how the dot, the triangle, and the circle interact with our consciousness. We observe to what geometric figure our consciousness goes and heads. And without controlling, we observe the impulse that this brings us. How this triangle creates a momentum, dynamics, balance. We observe the creative space between each one of the figures, between the dot and the triangle, between the triangle and the circle, between the dot and the circle. We allow ourselves to be balanced by this harmony, by this matrix, and we give thanks. And now we perceive how our inner world projects itself onto our human and soul manifestation, how this six-pointed star emerges in an affirmation, as above, so below. We open ourselves to what is foreseen for us in the inner world, and for that to project itself in our human consciousness and soul consciousness. We open ourselves so that a higher will, a thought of the infinite mind, which includes us as a circle, to project itself onto our soul and human manifestation. We see the empty spaces, the dot to the star, from the star to the circle, from the dot to the circle. Let's exercise neutrality. Let's just observe the movement in our consciousness. Let's fill this space with positiveness, with positive and edifying intentions. We open ourselves to be healed so that our human will may gradually coincide with this higher matrix in a trajectory of healing. This can be experienced by us. We open ourselves to the inner emptying of our own personal and limited will in the faith as compared to the infinite that is also this dot. We allow the emergence of love for a higher will and interest. We open ourselves to gradually discover this within us with great freedom and without being conditioned by anything. The dot, the six-pointed star, the empty spaces, the circle, and we give thanks. So let's contemplate all the sequence of symbols, the presence and pulsation of the star of fire, seeking to accept and welcome this inner stability, this impulse for discernment, the plunging into inner and supramental life. We allow ourselves to focus on the dot, the essence, the inner matrices within us, allowing everything that is not essential to be removed from this place. We concentrate ourselves and our consciousness on the dot. And from the central place, from this dot, we allow ourselves to perceive ourselves within a whole, within the circle. We allow this circle to embrace us, protect us. We feel as part of the whole, always concentrated on what is essential, maintaining the perfect proportion of the dot with the circle. Then this security of incarnation emerges within us in the sense of being aligned with our soul, with our spirit, in this triangle that is also contained and included in this circle and having the dot at the center. We allow ourselves to be permeated by this symbol. Interest. And in this opening of a higher identity that is also spiritual and awaken to the existence of a higher life, to the possibility, even while being here, of what is above may project itself upon what is below, so that the thought of creation may express itself in our lives. We see the six pointed star, always with the dot at the center, always within the context of the circle, and we seek to rescue this relationship with what is higher. Always keep in mind that there is a thought for us, there is a place in creation, always within a whole, always thinking in a harmonious way, building and serving the all. We allow ourselves and we allow this symbol to permeate our consciousness. Very well. So let's keep in mind the presence of these five geometric forms, their colors, vibrations, their rhythms, as we saw during the study, what they fostered in us. Let's learn to love this. Wow, I was touched by the dot with the circle. So I write down my feeling time and again. I practice it again. I place love onto that again. This really opens a small opening of contact with the inner world and with many consciousness that help us, including divas, hierarchies, points of light on the planet. This is a very broad work. Thank you very much for being together, for our being together today, and we see each other and one another in the next sharing on January the 10th. Thank you very much. Good night.